Hello, I'm Lloyd Moyer. Um, Today, actually a few days ago, I got a hold of a few really nice logs of maple, and I spent an afternoon cutting them up and getting them into bowl blanks. And now I have to rough a whole bunch of pieces out. And this video is going to be roughing out a few of the smaller ones. Um, so that's what you're going to see. So what you're going to see me do today is a little bit more of what you might see um, as a production style, because I'm going to do the same step on a few bowls all at once, and then do the next step on them next and all at once, and so forth and so on. Except for the last piece, I have six little blanks to turn, and five of them are basically like this one here, squares. So I'm just going to do the outside of all of them and then turn them all around and do the inside of all of them. And then I'll do the last one, which is going to be a natural edge piece. And I'm going to be doing this with my 1/2 inch spindle gouge, um, and just getting them round. A lot of the time, when you think about wood turning, the kind of turning that I'm going to be doing now is sort of what you think of. It's the fun part because the wood is green, it's wet, and so it makes a lot of shavings. Turns very easily. It's a little more dramatic. Turns quickly. All that fun stuff. All of wood turning is fun, but at least for me, the really fun part is the making of the shavings, like these great curly cues that come out. And they come out a lot better when the wood is green. And these will be set to dry. Yeah, the nice thing, one of the nice things about turning these smaller pieces is they'll dry faster. So you get to finish them quicker. Not quite round there, up at the top. And these pieces actually came from, I have some larger logs also, which you'll see me process later on. Um, and these little things came from like offcuts. Um, so again, just I used to throw all this stuff away in my earlier turning days, and the amount of money I threw away, because I'm selling my work, the amount of money that I threw away was staggering, I'm sure, because this stuff sells just as well, if not better, than the bigger stuff. Because it's the smaller stuff you can make less expensive. It's so much easier to sell, and you sell a lot more of it. I just want to make sure that this will fit in the chuck. Yep. So don't forget your offcuts. And by the way, that's it for this. Oh. Sometimes it is a challenge to get the wood off of the screw center. There are ways though. I also recommend, I know I put this on by turning the lathe on and just feeding it onto the screw, which works great. Be especially careful if your wood is not round, to really, really be gentle and careful. Um, if your wood is round, you still need to be gentle and careful. But it doesn't have corners. And that is why we check before we turn the lathe on. The way I always judge the speed is, you know, you go as fast as you can and be comfortable, or until your lathe moves. You know, got this great big yellow monster, so getting this thing moved takes a lot of weight. But go, as fast as you're comfortable with, or as slow as you're comfortable with. Don't worry about it. When I was first starting out, I didn't have a variable speed lathe, and I think the slow speed was 450, and 450 was pretty nerve-wracking if it was a piece that was really out of balance. So, like I said, I'm turning at about 1250 right now, but they're small pieces. You don't have to be turning fast. I'm sure some of you are asking about, or thinking to yourselves, why is he bowl turning with a spindle gouge? Is that, I thought you weren't supposed to do that. And this is a spindle gouge that is very specifically ground for this kind of work. You'll see that it's swept back. It's not a spindle roughing gouge. It's not the big U-shaped continental spindle gouge. Um, it's a relatively deep fluted spindle gouge, and it's it has this long point so that it can do what a bowl gouge can do on the outside of the bowl, and it's a cheaper tool. That was how I first heard it. It's a good idea because it's when you're talking about a pretty expensive hobby, and if you're a wood turner, especially if you're a wood turner for a living, you're probably not independently wealthy. So, uh, you know, get economies where you can get them. Oh, that one's got to be a lot smaller. Still more. There we go. I'm not at this stage. I'm not worried about getting a really great cut because I'm going to have to cut it again later. I'm also not real worried about um, shape. I mean, overall shape, sure, but I'm just really just getting it round and getting the weight out of the middle of it so that it can dry. And this one has, you can see right here, a little crack in it, but it has this also. So maybe maybe this piece won't make it, but who knows? Doesn't hurt, you know. Even if you don't get something out of a piece, I mean, you get the education of making it. All right, taking a pause here. So since this was so tightly on the screw, I actually just went and got my adjustable wrench and hooked it around the foot. Again, it doesn't have to stay real pretty because it's just going to sit and dry, and I'm going to, turn it again. So you just wrench it off. Would probably be easier if I drilled a slightly larger hole for the screw. However, it's the bit that I have, so it's what I'm using. Now, I just want to point out real quick that these next three pieces that I'm doing were in the log. How were they? Something about like this. So again, I tell you, I don't know how well you can see that, but again, I tell you, don't ignore your offcuts. That's, again, a piece that I would have thrown away not too long ago, and now I'm getting potentially three little bowls out of it. Maybe. I've never done this before, incidentally. Meaning I've never cut a piece into three that way. I've never tried it, so I'm gonna see how it goes. I'm interested. I've seen it done, but I've never done it myself. Checking to see if the piece is round, not how nicely it is, or not how nicely it's cutting. And just a little bit of bark right there that I'm gonna snip off. And if you hear the little bit of vibration that I'm getting from this, it's the face that the faceplate is up against is not completely flat. So it's just that's what's causing the vibration. Again, since I'm just roughing here, I'm not terribly worried about it. There you go. Ugh. Sorry about the grunting. Everybody knows that grunting makes it easier. One of the many things I really like about this craft, this art, is that you don't have to have talent to do that, to do it. I talk to people all the time. It's like, oh, don't sell yourself short. Of course you have talent. Not being self-deprecating. You know, to be a fine artist, a painter, like you need to have some kind of inherent talent. Um, and you can learn the technique and all of that. But if you're not good at it, you're not good at it. The same with things like writing or sculpting, um, and even carpentry. Like if you don't have it, you don't have it. But with wood turning, a complete novice can walk up to the lathe their first time and make something. Um, and it may not be good. Chances are it won't be necessarily good, but you don't need that talent to be able to do it. You just have to be able to um, follow the techniques. Hold the tool right. You know, hold the tool and let it let it cut. Like that's all it takes. You don't need to be good at it to start with. Um, of course, you get better at it with practice, like with anything. Um, but you don't have to be a great artist to do this. You don't even have to do it well to enjoy it, which I also love. I don't think I would have lasted this long doing it if you had to do it well to enjoy it. Um, thank goodness, right? I don't know if you agree with me on that or not, but if you've ever had, a novice, a friend, I actually had my wife when we were first dating came over and did it with me, and she turned a bowl. We still have it. It's not um, museum quality, but like again, we still have it. We love it. This has a crack in it that goes all the way around here. So I'm going to just take that off. This can be an outflowing piece. The other nice thing about these offcuts is, if they don't work, they don't work. You're just going to throw them away anyway. Still there. Usually when you're face grain turning, you don't want to cut downhill because you don't get as nice a cut. And actually, I'm going to show it to you for proof. I mean, this is wet and I'm still getting a cut like that because I'm cutting in the wrong direction. But again, since I'm roughing, it doesn't really matter. Okay. I'm going to leave that one like that. That crack is still there, but I can either throw it away or turn it off when I'm finishing. longer piece. I just want to see if it's out of frame. Oh, we're okay. If you're holding your tool like this, which is what I do, I rest my hand on the tool rest and then I hold it here. Sometimes when I'm roughing, those pieces come off and they hit my knuckle just like that. And it gets to hurt. So you can turn your hand around and actually you put your finger underneath the tool rest. You can give yourself some steady you there, and then hold the tool between your thumb and forefinger and pivot from there. That saves your hands from the shaving. You also can wear a glove. Although if you do choose to wear a glove, I recommend getting one that has or cutting off these two fingers and the thumb. So you just have a glove on these two fingers. Makes it easier. I'm sure you noticed the blue that I put on the end grain. I just had some paint. When I got the wood, it was it's very wet. So I put the paint on the end grain to slow the drying, so to hopefully keep it from checking a little bit, which it seems to have done. You know, when the wood is drying, the way it was best described to me is the growth rings are trying to become straight. So that puts pressure on, especially on the, a great deal of pressure right near the middle of the wood, which is why we cut the very center out, which is called the pith. And as the wood dries, it those growth rings really they straighten out. If you notice the way a bowl will warp when it warps, you can see that it's bending away from the very middle as the growth ring is straightened. So that's why we cut the pith out. All right. Ugh. All right, so that's 5 outsides done. I'm gonna see if I can find a different camera angle to make things a little more interesting. Oh, you know what? No, but before I do that, I'm gonna switch chucks. Before I change the camera angle, I'm gonna change chucks and I'll do the natural edge piece real quick. Something I almost never do is natural edge. So I've already bored out a section in here that I can expand my chuck into. One of the reasons I really don't do much with natural edge is it's very hard to get it to look good. And so, I got to find the center. I got to make sure that this is even. It's a good natural edge piece is beautiful. I just don't do it very often. But sometimes. especially since the bark pretty much always comes off. You give the wood enough time and the bark will come off. Yeah, I caught that because I was opened a little bit here, and it just the wood grabs the tool and pushes it back. If you're all the way over on the side and you go straight in, then you can open it up. And I'm just flattening this out here, really. Still got to get smaller. More yet? More yet? There we go. I think. Actually, you know what? I got an idea. Everybody watch out. Moyer's got an idea. This is going to be 2 pieces. I was just going to be too tall to adequately showcase the natural edge. There we go. That looks nice. I like that. So now I will take a pause and maybe move the camera. See if we can get a different angle for hollowing. Okay. So for hollowing, I'm going to be using my 3/8 bowl gouge. And this is just the bottom half of the natural edge piece that I just did. So I'll do that real quick. I don't know about using that. I might use the depth gauge on some of these, but for this one, I'm not gonna. The general rule that we use for um, the wall thickness of a roughed out bowl is 10% of the diameter. So, if the bowl is 3 inches, which is probably pretty close to what this one is, might not even be that much. Yeah, it's about 3 1/4. So 0.3 inches. So, a little more than 1/4 of an inch wall thickness is fine. Um, I generally leave them thicker than that because I like to have room to play around. When I go to finish it, I don't want to have to make it paper thin, You know what? I probably will use my bowl scraper here. I have a big one that I probably should be using. You can always use for the inside, use as big a scraper as you can because it's much easier to get a consistent cut. But that's it. Like that's all. If you for these little pieces, another fun part is a few cuts and you're done with the inside. Very, very quick. Ooh, I'm getting close. All right. This one is right on the edge of being too small to fit into the chuck, which is pretty annoying because I have to leave room for it to move. But sorry, I'm sure my hand is in your way. That one needs to be deeper. Reaching out a little bit far because I didn't feel like moving the tool rest, which is why the blade was grabbing a little bit. I think this one's going to be too small. Maybe not. Maybe not. Nope, that's fine. Something's not right there. Sitting in there a little crooked. I always try and put a shoulder on the bottom so that the the chuck can find a place to locate. Sometimes you get it crooked, which I just did. It's still a little crooked. See? All right. Also, right like the last one, it's right on the edge of being too small for the chuck. I think we're okay. He said incorrectly. Next thing I'm going to try one more thing here. Because this is such a deep chuck, I can open it more and grip it higher up the wall of the bowl. But then what I have to do, the challenging part, is get it to sit in there straight. I think that's going to be close enough. If it's not, we'll make it close enough. Yeah. And if this doesn't work, then I'm calling it quits on this one. I'm trying to show you the right way to do it. I should do it the right way, right? Which means don't be lazy and try and make the cut without moving the tool rest, even if you're just roughing. So I moved the tool rest. Okay. Took longer than it should have, but I don't have anywhere to be. This one, I am going to use my depth gauge. About there. then the nice thing about having the depth gauge is then all I have to do is keep digging out until I find the bottom of the hole. I saw a good friend of mine a few days ago, and she said to me that I must have a very steady hand to do this. And I was trying to explain to her that you really don't, because the wood spinning holds the tool on the tool rest, and the tool rest keeps the tool from going anywhere. So where I guess it doesn't hurt to have a steady hand, and if you're trying to do very delicate work, trying to do a very flat bottom or something like that, where you're trying to get the bottom straight, or trying to do um, a straight line, which I don't very often do. You have to have a steady hand, but like you see this, I'm holding the tool with one hand, and then I'm just moving the front part with my thumb. I'm barely even holding it. So I wasn't trying to be self-deprecating, and she was trying to give me a compliment, and I appreciated it. But I think you have to have a sense of proportion, or you need to develop a sense of proportion. You don't have to have one to start with. Um, I think that helps a great deal. And some kind of a sense of design doesn't hurt. What's going to look pretty? What's going to be well balanced? Um, yeah. But again, like, you just make shavings, make something, and maybe you make something and you say, nah, I don't really like that one. Well, you throw it away. Actually, better yet, as Richard Raffin says, cut it in half. See how well you did. Look at the wall thickness. You can learn a lot from cutting something in half. Um, Richard Raffin makes thousands of bowls. I don't, so I don't very often cut anything in half. Um, as much as I see the value in what he's saying, I just for I don't make enough. But still, like, don't worry about making something that's bad. Like, thank goodness you know what that means. Like, you gotta learn what that means. What to have a good bowl, you gotta have a bad bowl. To do something well, you gotta know what it means to do it badly. Um, and I made plenty of bad pieces, and I've made plenty of pieces that I thought were good that I look at now and say, "Oh God, how could I have thought that was any good?" Um, that's the evolution of an artist, right? Don't be embarrassed by it. Be welcome, welcome it. You just don't have to be perfectly lined up. You saw me just adjusting it. You don't want it to be totally jacked, but if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal, because it's going to warp and move anyway. You want it to be close enough so that the wall thickness is not way out of whack. Sorry. Trying to stay out of the way of the camera and keep my hand out of the way of the camera. Maybe I need a different, like an over my shoulder kind of angle. I think I'm still doing okay. I hope I am. I hope nothing's getting in the way here. That one gets a little bit thick. It doesn't have to be, a perfect wall thickness, but you want it to be consistent. Because if it's thick in a spot and thin in another spot, those areas are going to dry at different rates. So if one area is dry, it's not as flexible. So, the thin area gets dry, and and then the thick area is still trying to move and warp, and the thin area isn't flexible enough to move to accommodate it, and that's when you get a crack. So again, it doesn't have to be thin, doesn't have to be thick, it just needs to be consistent. And nothing and no one is ever perfect, so you get cracks anyway, but if you keep that in mind, maybe you minimize them. I think that's notice that for doing this job, I don't have my bowl gouge ground like a fingernail, like an Ellsworth grind. I have it with this steep bevel, and then I actually have it swept back a little bit here, so I have more of an edge when I'm hollowing out. There's more edge there, so that I can take a bigger cut if I need to. I don't necessarily need to, but if I do need to, I can. I find that to be a very effective grind for hollowing. And I can still use this upright sort of shearing cut. But then when I turn onto the side, I get that longer bevel. Let's go a little bit deeper. Didn't use my depth gauge on this one. It's a little bit thick there. Now I'm low. One more. Little pieces like this can sometimes get popped in the microwave also. Then that'll speed the drying process. Or they can be put in a, I actually have a converted refrigerator. You drill holes in the refrigerator, one towards the top, one towards the bottom, and you put just a regular light bulb in there, or even a small low watt light bulb, and becomes a very effective kiln that I use a great deal for drying, and it'll dry out. It'll take your drying time from 6 months to 6 weeks. I don't usually use the microwave method. I don't have a microwave dedicated for it, and I don't really feel like using my kitchen microwave for my wood turning. Actually, I wouldn't care, but the rest of the family might. Didn't do anything with the rim of this one. I have in the past made what I think of as what I like better as than an actual natural edge is I will just leave the surface that the chainsaw makes on the rim of the bowl. So it's not natural, but it's not turned. Makes a really cool rim. I recommend it. If I think of it, I'll make one, so you can see. But it really you got to have a good chainsaw cut, and it has to be relatively even. But it can make a really neat rim design. How are we doing here? Not too bad. Actually, I am going to get my bigger scraper for this, just because it reaches down into the bowl a little bit more. And of course, I'm too low. Had to widen the opening there. I think using that That scraper just gave me a, oh no, it didn't. It has a very, very hairy finish there, a very hairy surface. All right. Now I just have to get, I have to get in front here for just a second. Oh, no, I still have a ways to go. Okay. So now we have so there we are. 7 pieces ready to set aside for a little while and dry out, and then we'll come back after they've done that and see how many of them we can finish out.